Hello and welcome to Anime Animosity. It's time for another seasonal rundown retrospective, albeit this time it'll be a double feature because I don't have much to talk about for both spring and winter of 2020, so I thought why not put them together. Wow, it's almost like I'm saying this for the second time because I recorded this like 10 minutes ago, but was a dumbass and didn't have the window capture set up right, so I didn't actually record any of what's on screen. So let's go through this all again, shall we? Well, for me it's again, for you this will be the first time and only time. So let's start with Tower of God, or Kaminoto or Sui no Top. Fantastic anime. The best of the webtoon anime that came out in 2020, in my opinion. If you haven't checked it out, seriously give it a go. If you watched and enjoyed in any aspect the other webtoon anime, I do think Tower of God will be right up your alley because it is really, really good, and I fully plan to read the webtoon at some point if a second season doesn't get announced by the end of the year, because I want more of Tower of God. It genuinely is fantastic. I highly recommend this show to just about anyone that likes fantasy with good characters, good writing. It is really, really good, and the twist that you may or may not know about that happens in the last couple episodes, even though I saw it coming and knew it was happening, still punched me in the gut. Tower of God genuinely is really, really good. Moving on to another show that I think is really good is Kaguya-sama Love is War, Season 2. So Kaguya-sama, in my opinion, is quite funny. However, I know there are people out there that do not find Kaguya-sama funny at all. And, well, comedy is subjective, so of course there are going to be people that won't find Kaguya-sama funny. But from my perspective, I like the dry, somewhat ridiculous and over-the-top comedy that is present in Kaguya-sama. However, with Season 2 specifically, the story and the character development and the plot points that are brought up and the things it tackles are genuinely really good. Season 1 is very comedy-focused. It's very Kaguya-sama. It's very funny, full of comedy, full of over-the-top reactions and the like. But Season 2 has, like, more plot to it. There's more character-focused moments. For example, with Ishigami, during the whole sports festival sub-arc. That is genuinely brilliant. And I think that alone is worth watching all of Kaguya-sama for. Because that arc hits a little bit too close to home, but in the right way. In a way that makes it special and stand out. Seriously, give Kaguya a try, and if you don't find it funny, you don't like it, well, that's entirely up to you, and you can drop it if you feel like. I've already talked about Food Wars, let's move on to Gleipnir, which is a show that I watched and dropped for no real reason. Watched a couple episodes of, didn't particularly enjoy, didn't dislike, just stopped watching it because. And that's a running trend for a lot of shows at the beginning of 2020, which is when I started watching Anime Weekly and really started watching anime properly. So, yeah, there's a lot of shows here that I started and then didn't even bother to continue with for no real reason. The reason for, well, perhaps it could be for the fact that maybe it was quote unquote too soon for me to start watching weekly anime. But that's also a little bit bullshit because, well, the season after this I watched quite a lot. And I did also watch a fair few shows this season, but those were like second seasons, like Food Wars. I didn't watch Kaguya-sama until more recently. Tower of God I watched at the time. Princess Connect tried and dropped Fruits Basket. I watched very recently as well. So yeah, there wasn't a lot of shows here that I actually watched and to completion at the time they aired, unless it was a second season of a show. Second season, an additional season of a show I'd already watched, like Food Wars. Tower of God is the only exception to that, because I dropped Gleipnir, dropped Plunderer, dropped Princess Connect Redive, and I also dropped this absolute garbage. Do not watch this, it's so bad. It's really boring. Princess Connect Redive, let's talk about that for a minute, shall we? It's compared to Konosuba quite a bit, I feel. And that's not exactly fair, because while it has a very similar feel, so you can compare it to Konosuba, it's not Konosuba. It doesn't try to be Konosuba, and it never will be Konosuba, because it's got while a similar feel, it's not exactly the same. And the difference is that Konosuba is the scummy characters being pieces of shit and you know, you've seen Konosuba, you know what I mean. But this is a lot more wholesome, a lot friendlier, I guess. So it has a very, while they have a similar vibe, some overlap, the bits that don't overlap are almost polar opposites from my perspective. So it wasn't anywhere near as funny as Konosuba was, but it's, from what I watched, I didn't particularly enjoy, didn't particularly dislike, but I know people that have enjoyed this, so if you like Konosuba, you can probably check this out. As for Plunderer, I don't really have anything to say because I just stopped watching it after 3 episodes. So, yeah. And with that, let's move on to Winter of the same year. You know my thoughts on My Hero. I didn't watch Bofuri, but I did watch Darwin's Game. Darwin's Game is a show that really I think I look at way... how do I put this? It's a show that I think is better than it actually is. Darwin's Game was basically the first show that I ever watched to completion from a seasonally airing show. So I think I do have it in a special place in my heart, but also I did really enjoy watching it. It's a death game anime with superpowers. Very similar to an anime that's airing right now in Deate Gorbyo Debatteru, and, well, this is just better. As I mentioned in my short review of that, of its first episode in one of the weekly episode reviews I put out. So, as things stand, Darwin's Game is a show I actually really enjoy, and I think you should check out as well. It's also got a really fire opening. Chain by Asuka is a really good song, in my opinion. But it's up to you. I really like the show. If you like death game anime, this is genuinely one of the better death games out there. Seriously, I do recommend you give this a try. So let us move on to Iruma-kun. Because Iruma-kun is a show that is also really, really good. Now, I didn't watch it until, I think, toward the end of 2020, but it is a really good show. It's really wholesome, really warm. Yes, I guess you could say it's an isekai. Because it is. Iruma ends up in a completely different world. So it does fall under the isekai category, but it does not feel like an isekai. As for what class is an isekai, well, I plan to make a video on that at some point in the future. But Iruma-kun is really good. Like, it really is. I talked about it a little bit when I talked about Season 2 in one of my seasonal rundowns, but Iruma-kun genuinely is really worth a watch. It's such a good such a good anime. Give it a watch. It's really, really good slice of life. Even though it's as far from it's pretty far from reality. Even though, I forgot my point. Basically, it's just really good slice of life. Even though it's really far from reality. There we are. That's what I was gonna say. And next up we have Kyoko Suri or Inspector, another show that I started and dropped for no real reason after about like 5 episodes. That's really all there is to it. I didn't dislike it, I didn't enjoy it, especially. It wasn't bad, so it had to have been somewhat enjoyable, but it didn't really stand out all that too much. So, yeah, I don't really have a lot to say on it. It was alright from what I watched, from what I remember, because it's been a very long time now. But I didn't hate it, but I wouldn't say it was anything special either. Speaking of something being special, Haikyuu to the Top, or Haikyuu Season 4, Part 1. The Haikyuu is very special. It's fantastic. And every season of Haikyuu, for me, gets better than the previous. That was awfully said. Every season of Haikyuu is better than the last. It gets better every season. Season 1 sets the bar really high. Season 2 meets that level quite easily, and then pushes it up just a little bit more. And then Season 3 raises the bar a fuckload. And then to the top, pushes that just a bit further, and then to the top, Part 2 pushes it beyond that. And, given that we're talking about to the top is a really good season of Haikyuu. Like, it just is. There wasn't any low point, in my opinion, for To the Top Part 1, whereas To the Top Part 2, I didn't really fully enjoy until the game that season focuses on really kicked off. But that's my opinion. You might think differently about Haikyuu. And if you haven't watched Haikyuu or haven't gotten around to checking out To the Top, I seriously recommend you give it a go, because it is some of the best sports anime there is. And it's just raw sports. There's not any like supernatural or superpowers added in. It is just sports ball go burr. Seriously, give it a go. It's worth your time. That was also a terrible joke. I'm so sorry. Plunder I've already talked about. Everybody knows what Interspecies Reviewers is. If you don't, did you, like, not exist on the internet when it did? Like, come on. And then there's Rikakoi, which is an alright anime that, again, like many shows from my early time watching weekly anime, I started and dropped after a handful of episodes. Now, did I drop it because I didn't like it? No. Did I drop it because I just did? Yes. Like all of these, there's no real reason I stopped watching them. I just stopped watching them because watching seasonal anime wasn't for me at the time, and perhaps if I'd waited and binged the show, I would have enjoyed it more. Card in the top right for a video on that entire topic that came out a couple days ago. But Rikakoi wasn't bad. It was wholesome, and it was somewhat funny. I did quite enjoy watching it, from what I remember. So, I actually think that this show, I maybe should give a second chance, but also I have no idea where I was, and I don't really want to start from the beginning again. So I probably won't. But if you like rom-coms, and you like a little sprinkling of science, albeit it's not the most... well, I don't know if it's inaccurate, but for the context, it's not exactly, making the most sense. But seriously, I do think that Rikakoi is worth checking out if you like rom-coms. Because it's not terrible. And it's also, recent, so you can have some nice animation with it, I guess. I don't really know what my point was there. I think it's getting a second season at some point, but I'm not sure. Don't hold me to that. So let's move on to Infinite Dendrogram, which I hold it in the same regard as Dharma's Game, just not as highly. It's one of the few shows that I finished. And while it is not very good, it's mediocre at best. It's another game-based, VR MMO, full dive, isekai, Sword Art Online clone, but better than Sword Art Online, but that doesn't take a lot. But at the same time, it's also just really mediocre. But I really enjoyed it because of the time at which I watched it. When I hadn't seen all that much anime, it was one of the few shows of that season I actually finished. So I look at it more positively than perhaps I really should. But it was enjoyable. And if you like the game-based anime, then this is worth checking out at least, to see if it's to your liking. If you like Sword Art Online, there's no reason you wouldn't like this, unless you like the quote-unquote high stakes that Sword Art Online set out to have and then didn't have after much longer. That was a really bad sentence. Fuck. But Infinite Dendro isn't bad by any stretch. Well, no. It's mediocre, but it's not bad. Yeah, it's not bad, but it's not good. That's the best way I can put it. But I also really enjoyed it because, well, of the time I watched it. And with that, I believe, yep, we are done with this double feature seasonal rundown retrospective for winter and spring of 2020. And yeah, I feel like I'm running out of things to talk about with these, but that might be because 2020 was a year where I didn't watch a lot of seasonal anime. Because, well, I'd just gotten into anime. And I hadn't watched a lot of the shows that came out, and because I know that they came out, and I'm aware of them, and because I didn't watch them, I'm not now going to go back and watch them, if that makes any sense. But as we go back through the years, I'm sure we'll find seasons I can talk more about, some that I can talk less about, maybe we'll do some more double features at some point in the future. But yeah, we are now finished with all the 2020 anime, at least that I watched. And we can now look forward to moving into 2019 next week. And with all of that out of the way, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell if you really feel like it. And with that said, I've been Animosity, you've been you, and I hope to see you all next time for another video. Ta-ta for now.